Good day, everybody. This is Lewie coming at you again. Let's talk about this election and the problems that we're having with it. First off, let's face it, the Democrats cheated, okay? There's a lot of election fraud going on, voter fraud. And the thing is our president is not giving up yet. He has yet to concede. He's not going to concede, I don't believe. In fact, I think he's got a bunch of things going on where he's going to end up taking the election back and win it in a fair, honest manner. Now, with that being said, for the last 4 years, the left has yet to acknowledge his presidency. They have done everything they can to delegitimize it. They have done everything they can to make it hard for him to do the job that he volunteered to do and got voted in to do. So, with the way I got it figured is this. If Biden walks away with it, he's not going to be a legitimate president because of the voter fraud. Simple as that. He's not going to be a legitimate president, and he would be putting himself in a position where he's going to end up being delegitimatized because half this country don't want anything to do with him being president. Look at the voter turnout. Look at the numbers. Nearly half the country don't want him to be president. And with that being said, he's not going to be a legitimate president. He's always going to be a problem. Now, for the last 4 years, the left has said, not my president, when they were referring to Donald Trump. So I'm going to take a page from their book. Biden will never be my president. Trump, for the next 4 years, will be my president. He was my president for the last 4 years, and for the next 4 years, he will be my president. He won. Just because the numbers ain't there doesn't mean he didn't win. It only means that they cheated. There have been a lot of voter fraud evidence coming up, okay? We don't have a lot of 120-year-olds in this country. In fact, I looked it up. Guinness World Book of Records stated that the oldest living person was 122, I think it was, and she lived in France and died, I think, back in 1997. The oldest living person in the world, according to Guinness World Book of Records right now, is 117 years old, and he lives in Japan. So I'm not saying it's not possible that a 120-year-old voted. I am saying that it's not possible that that many 120-year-old people voted. Okay? Understand Michigan's full of hardy people. Yep, so is it Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, and northern Washington, Alaska. They all have hardy people. But they're not so hardy where they're all living to 120 years old. And there's no way in hell, because I heard a report of a 170-year-old voting, there's no way in hell that ever happened. All right? With that being said, never in my lifetime have I ever seen a voting or a counting precinct shut down during an election and then have more votes waiting for them the next day than what they had waiting for them the day before. The laws are set up for these elections to keep them fair and honest. And obviously these laws haven't been followed. The courts cannot decide what these laws are. That's done by the legislature, not the courts. But yet in Pennsylvania, the courts decided the laws for this last voting cycle. That's fair and unfair and improper. You can't find votes suddenly. I've said this before in a previous video. If you have even just 10,000 votes sitting waiting to be counted, you're going to know where they're at. Simply because they take up so much room. Every post office I've been in doesn't have room to store 150,000 votes and forget about them. Nor do any of these precincts where they were doing the counting. There's no place for them to store 150,000 votes and suddenly forget about them. There's no way. It takes up too much room. You're talking about several boxes of ballots just for 10,000. You're talking several boxes of ballots. If you can fit 1,000 ballots in a box, that's still 10 boxes of ballots. And those would be very large boxes, because them ballots are not little slips of paper. They are huge. They have barcodes on them. They have your candidate choices for all parties that are involved. Excuse me, still a little tired. So you're not talking small slips of paper where you sit there and write the name down. And then you've got the question about the Sharpies. If you're not supposed to use Sharpies, why would you give out a Sharpie to do your ballot with? The problem is the bleeding through. So I looked at my ballot and mine bled through, and I'm concerned that my vote didn't get counted. Because the reason I'm concerned about that is because I know a lot of Trump supporters in my area, but yet the whole state went blue. It makes no sense to me. But I don't know everybody in my state. So I don't have much of a theory to work with. Then there's the illegal vote. You know, your illegal immigrants are voting. And you also have certain individuals who are trying to change laws about felons, convicted felons voting. And you have the endless counting. There are still states that are not done counting. And yet, they can count millions of votes the day of the election, but they can't seem to get through the rest of them 10 days later. How does that figure in? It doesn't. And then you got the votes that are coming in with no postmarks, or postmarks dated after the 3rd of November, which is when Election Day was this year, is the 3rd of November, November 3rd. Makes no sense to me. There's a lot of things that's going on that make no sense to the common man. And because of that, that tells me there's a lot of voter fraud. And I'm going to tell you something else too. The media does not decide who the president is. This year it's the Electoral College and possibly the House of Representatives. If our president holds out long enough, he can get the vote taken right to the House of Representatives. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, yes, the Speaker of the House is anti-Trump. All right? However, we gained some seats in the House of Representatives. The conservatives did. It's a much more of a 50-50 mix right now. And on top of that, 31, I believe, states are all Republican. 31 versus 19. Now, the way that works is if it goes to the House, if the vote goes to the House, each state gets one vote. I understand, all the states have multiple members in the House. They have multiple representatives in the House, but they get one vote, which means they have to agree. And I'm going to tell you right now, when you only have one vote and you've got 31 states that are Republican, it's going to go to our president. So sit back, relax, and pray. That's all we need to do. And I will tell you that this will work out. Biden, pedophile Biden, will not be our president. He can bitch and he can whine and he can cry and he can scream and he can moan all he wants. He will not be our president. We will have Trump for 4 more years. I have faith in that. And that's what I'm praying for. That's what I'm hoping for. And that's what I'm pulling for. You have a good day.